In the heart of 18th century France, nestled among dense forest and jagged hills, lay a region called Gévaudan. Remote, rural, and largely forgotten by the royal court in Paris. It was a place where life was hard and superstition was stronger than science. People lived off the land close to the wild. Wolves were common in the region, and so were tales of things darker than wolves, creatures that stalked the night, eyes glowing, breath steaming, waiting for those foolish enough to walk alone. And then, in the summer of 1764, something began to stir. It started with whispers. A woman tending cattle in the early morning mist was attacked. Her body was discovered mangled, her throat torn, eyes wide open in terror. The villagers, hardened by years of survival, were shaken. They had seen wolf attacks before. This was different. The wounds were deeper, the bite marks too wide. Her body had been mauled, not devoured. Whatever had done this, it killed for sport, not hunger. Within weeks, more attacks followed, children vanishing on their way to fetch water. Shepherds found in pools of blood. Entire villages began locking themselves indoors at dusk. And still, the killings continued. Reports poured in from every corner of Gévaudan, always the same pattern. Brutal, targeted, and disturbingly consistent. It didn't hunt livestock and hunted people. Panic spread like wildfire. Priests declared it a punishment from God for the sins of the people. Some said it was a demon sent from hell. Others blamed witches, or gypsies, or dark magic festering in the woods. The more rational minds pointed to a particularly aggressive wolf or a pack gone rogue. But even seasoned hunters began to doubt. Wolves don't attack like this. They don't wait. They don't strike again and again with such intelligence. And they certainly don't seem to pick their victims with such eerie precision. Word of the terror reached nearby towns and eventually made its way to Paris. The number of dead was rising rapidly. By early 1765, over 30 people had been killed. The region was in chaos. Fields were left untended, schools closed. No one dared walk alone. Gévaudan was no longer just a province, it was a hunting ground. The attacks showed a chilling pattern. The creature often went for the neck, crushing the windpipe. Victims were often women and children, as if the monster knew its prey. There were even reports of the beast showing strange cunning, waiting in ambush, evading traps, and appearing in places hours apart, as if it could move faster than any animal should. Survivors began to speak. Some claimed they saw it. Descriptions varied, but one phrase kept returning, not like a wolf. It was bigger, darker, with strange stripes or a long tail. One survivor said its eyes glowed red in the dark. Another swore it stood on two legs before lunging. These weren't just frightened villagers, they were hunters, shepherds, soldiers. People who had seen real wolves and knew the difference. Soon, the Beast of Gévaudan became more than a local terror, it became a national obsession. Newspapers carried the story. Engravers drew terrifying depictions. Rumors spread that the beast was invulnerable to bullets, that it could understand human speech, that it was something ancient and evil reborn. Some even whispered the word werewolf, a creature of folklore come to life in the forest of France. By the end of 1765, the death toll had surpassed 60. And still, no one could catch it. Local nobles organized hunting parties, armed men scoured the countryside. Rewards were offered. Prayers were said, but the beast kept killing. It was no longer just a predator, it was a phantom. A force of nature, a reminder that in this age of enlightenment, with its telescopes and philosophies, the dark still had teeth, and a bit deep. As the people of Gévaudan huddled in fear, the line between fact and legend began to blur. Was this truly a wolf? Or something far older and more terrifying, something that fed not just on flesh, but on fear itself? Whatever it was, it had declared war on a forgotten corner of France, and it was winning. They say history repeats itself, but what about the parts we forgot? Welcome to Echoes of History, the channel where we dig up the dusty corners of the past to uncover the weird, the wild, and the wait, what? Stories they didn't teach you in school. Grab your curiosity, and maybe a cup of tea, because what you're about to hear might just change how you see the world. As panic spread through Gévaudan, more and more survivors began to speak, some shaken, others nearly catatonic, but all certain of one thing. What attacked them was not a wolf. One young boy, barely 10 years old, claimed it knocked him to the ground but spared him after he stabbed it with a sharpened stick. He described its fur as coarse and dark, almost reddish. Its eyes glowed yellow. It was bigger than any dog he had seen, closer to the size of a small cow, and its mouth massive, filled with sharp, uneven teeth. Others told of its speed. One woman said the beast ran faster than a horse, crashing through underbrush without slowing. A farmer swore it leapt across a small ravine without taking a running start. A shepherd described a creature that moved with a kind of hateful purpose. It didn't just hunt, it seemed to stalk, to choose, to enjoy the chase. Many survivors agreed on certain traits. It was large, much larger than a wolf. Its head was oddly shaped, some said like a boar's or a greyhound's. It had a long, whip-like tail and unusually strong legs, especially the back ones, allowing it to pounce great distances. Its chest was broad, its shoulders unnaturally powerful, and some said it had a stripe along its spine. Some even claimed it had hooves instead of paws. As strange as those accounts sounded, the consistencies made them hard to dismiss. People across dozens of villages were describing the same impossible thing. And it wasn't just peasants, nobles, priests, even soldiers who had witnessed the beast firsthand were baffled. The sheer variety of its attacks also made it unusual. It sometimes killed one person and fled. Other times, it would attack two or three in a single incident, mauling one and dragging another off into the woods. Bodies were often found with the throat torn out and nothing else touched. No flesh missing, no signs of feeding. The kills were surgical, almost ritualistic. And then came the most unsettling detail of all. Several witnesses claimed the beast had a strange face, almost human-like, not in a literal sense, but something in the way it looked at them. Its eyes showed intelligence, malice, as though it understood what it was doing, as though it liked it. It became harder and harder to ignore the possibility that this wasn't just an animal. Some priests began whispering that the devil had sent a familiar or demonic creature with the body of a beast and the soul of a monster. They spoke of possession, of sins brought upon the land by blasphemy. The church began to take notice, but the locals had other theories. Some believed it was a hybrid, perhaps a lion or hyena escaped from a traveling circus and bred with wolves. Others claimed it was an ancient creature from Celtic legend, awakened from the deep forest to punish mankind. And then there were the werewolf rumors. In France, the legend of the loup-garou was well known, a cursed man who transforms under moonlight. The way the beast came and went, the cleverness of its kills, the way it evaded hunters, it all fit. There were even reports of the beast walking onto legs, of clothes found near attack sites, of blood trails that vanished mid-path. Villagers began to see the beast not just as a threat, but as a symbol of divine punishment, of government failure, of primal fear given form. Children were told not to stray, or l'abbé would come for them. Families left offerings near forest edges, hoping to ward it off. Hysteria grew when one village held a public funeral for 3 children killed by the beast. The priest said in his sermon, "We are being tested. God is watching how we respond to the devil's beast." It no longer mattered what the creature was, what mattered was what it meant. Even the press began to speculate wildly. Illustrations published in Paris showed a creature unlike anything real, twisted bodies, bloody claws, and eyes full of hatred. The more reports came in, the less the monster seemed bound by biology. It had become a creature of the imagination, part wolf, part demon, part nightmare, and yet the deaths were very real. By now, over 70 people had died. Many more were missing. Entire communities were paralyzed with fear. The creature seemed invincible, immune to bullets and traps. Some said it was protected by a dark sorcerer. Others swore it was more than one beast, working in tandem, striking across the land with terrifying coordination. The fear was no longer just of the beast. It was of what it represented: the failure of protection, the collapse of normalcy, the sense that the rules of the world no longer applied. Because if something like this could exist, what else was out there and still unhunted? Each new victim for the legend, each survivor added more color to the portrait, and each attempt to understand it only deepened the mystery. Beast of Gévaudan was no longer just a monster, it was a myth in the making, and France was running out of time. By the end of 1764, the death toll in Gévaudan had reached alarming heights. The countryside lived in dread, entire parishes abandoned their lands. Travelers refused to cross the region, and the story of the beast had spread far beyond its borders. Soon, the hysteria reached Versailles. When word of the killings reached King Louis XV, he was deeply concerned not only for his people, but for his reputation. A monster roaming the land, mocking his authority, that was unacceptable. The king could not allow rural terror to grow into a symbol of royal incompetence, so he took action. He ordered a full-scale military intervention. Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel, a seasoned officer, was dispatched with 57 dragoons, armed cavalry trained for battle. His orders: find and kill the beast. At once, Duhamel coordinated search parties, set traps, interviewed survivors, and mapped out the sites of attacks. He even offered rewards for information or sightings. His men camped in forests. They lay bait. They waited for nights on end, freezing in the misty dark. But the beast never came, or when it did, it slipped through their fingers. Duhamel tried everything. He dressed his soldiers as women and children to lure the creature out. He used livestock as bait. He deployed dogs trained to hunt wolves. None of it worked. Sometimes, the beast struck while they were only a few miles away. Other times, it vanished for days, only to reappear on the opposite side of the province. It was as if it was toying with them. Frustration set in. The military presence disrupted villages. Locals grew restless. Duhamel himself wrote to the royal court, describing the beast as an extraordinary creature, admitting that no ordinary methods would catch it. He even considered the possibility that it was supernatural lore at the very least, something entirely unknown to science. After months of failure, Louis XV grew impatient. The press was mocking the campaign. Pamphlets portrayed the king's soldiers as baffled fools, wandering the woods while the beast laughed and kept killing. The king needed results. He replaced Duhamel with a new man, Francois Antoine, the royal gun bearer, a man of prestige and experience in hunting. Antoine arrived with his son and a team of professional wolf hunters. He was determined not to fail. Antoine brought organization, resources, and royal credibility. His men moved quickly. Using intelligence gathered by Duhamel, they tracked prints, they listened to witnesses, and in September 1765, they killed the massive wolf in the forest of St. Julien. It was an enormous specimen over 5 feet long, with jaws that could crush bone. Antoine had it stuffed and presented to the king as law bait. The royal court rejoiced. Antoine was paid handsomely. The king declared the crisis over. The royal hunt was, officially, a success. But Gévaudan was not convinced. Locals whispered that it wasn't the same beast. Survivors of previous attacks said this one didn't match. And, most damning of all, the killings didn't stop. Only 2 months after the so-called beast had been slain, the death resumed. Another child was found dead, then a woman, then 2 more shepherds. The patterns were identical. The mutilations matched. The terror returned, undiminished, but the king refused to reopen the hunt. Admitting failure was not an option. The royal court had already declared victory. To go back would be an embarrassment, so instead, they silenced the press. They stopped the reports. The public was told the beast was gone. Anything after must be a coincidence. But in Gévaudan, people knew better. They continued to bury their dead. They continued to whisper of a creature too smart to be caught, of a second beast, or a surviving cub, or perhaps the original was never killed at all. Jean Chastel, a local farmer and hunter, was among those who refused to give up. He believed the beast still roamed free and that it was no ordinary wolf. Over time, he began to take the hunt into his own hands, guided not just by instinct, but by something deeper, something personal. Meanwhile, the people of Gévaudan were left to fend for themselves, their pleas ignored. Their dead forgotten by the crown, they came to rely on faith and folklore. Some believed the beast was a punishment for the sins of France. Others believed it was a creature, sent by God to cleanse the land. But most believed the truth lay somewhere in between, something real, something monstrous, and still out there, waiting, watching, and killing again. The death of the massive wolf in 1765 was meant to be the end of the terror. The king had spoken. The beast was dead, the reward had been paid, Paris had moved on, but Gévaudan had not, because the killings continued. Only 2 months after Francois Antoine returned to Versailles with his prize, another body was found, then another, and these weren't distant, isolated incidents. These were attacks that bore the same bloody signature: crushed throats, torn limbs, untouched livestock, and victims chosen with eerie precision. The villagers were not just scared anymore, they were angry. They had been told the nightmare was over, that their suffering was at an end. But the blood kept flowing, children still vanished, shepherds still died in the fields, mothers still buried sons. And what made it worse, no one in power seemed to care anymore. The royal court, having already declared the beast slain, went silent. Newspapers that had once sensationalized every death suddenly stopped publishing stories about Gévaudan. Officials refused to acknowledge new attacks. The people began to whisper that something was being hidden. Some believed there were a beast and mated pair, or perhaps a mother and offspring. Others suggested that the real beast had never been killed, and the one Antoine paraded was a convenient scapegoat, offered to calm the masses and protect the king's reputation. But the most chilling theory, that there was never just a beast but a man behind it. There were rumors, old ones, that someone in Gévaudan was training a creature, perhaps a foreign animal, perhaps something more sinister. There were whispers of dark rituals, of a noble family protecting the monster, of hunters who had seen things but dared not speak. Stories emerged of strange men riding with beasts on chains, or leading them from village to village in the dead of night. The idea of a conspiracy took hold. Some said the king had known the real threat was still alive but needed the story to end. Others believed the military covered it up out of shame. There were even rumors of Masonic involvement or of secret royal hunts gone wrong, resulting in a bloodthirsty animal loosed upon the land. In the absence of truth, fear filled the void. And yet, despite the silence from above, the people of Gévaudan refused to give up. They began to organize themselves. Families set watches at night. Villagers gathered in armed patrols. Children no longer walked alone, not even by day. And then, from the shadows, one name began to emerge again: Jean Chastel. A quiet man, a devout Catholic, a local hunter who had grown up in the region. He had never accepted that the beast was dead, and unlike the noble hunters, he had no interest in glory or gold. He simply wanted the nightmare to end. By early 1767, 2 years after the official death of the beast, the killings intensified once more. In one village, 3 children were taken in the span of a week. In another, an entire family was attacked, their bodies discovered in a field, barely recognizable. This time, there would be no soldiers, no royal assistance, only Chastel. According to accounts, he prayed, he fasted. He carried a musket loaded with blessed silver bullets in detail. That would later spark legends of werewolves and dark magic. Then, on June 19, 1767, it happened. While hunting with a small group in the forest of Montmouchet, Chastel saw the beast. He didn't panic. He didn't chase it. Instead, he waited calm, steady, and when the creature appeared in a clearing, he raised his gun and fired. The beast dropped instantly. When they examined the body, they found it massive, larger than any wolf they had ever seen. Its fur was coarse, streaked with strange colors. Its mouth was filled with sharp teeth, and in its stomach, they found human remains. Chastel had done what soldiers, nobles, and the royal court had failed to do. He had killed the beast, but curiously no official report followed. The body was quietly buried. No grand declaration was made. The government remained silent. The people, however, were certain the killing stopped completely for the first time in 3 years. Gévaudan was free of blood, but the questions remained. Why had the court ignored the second wave of attacks? Why had the press gone silent? Who was really behind the cover-up? And what exactly had Jean Chastel killed in that clearing? Was it just an unusually large wolf? Or something else? A trained animal? A supernatural being? A symbol of chaos silenced only because it became inconvenient? The mystery deepened with every passing year. Chastel never spoke much about the event. Some say he was haunted by it. Others say he knew more than he ever admitted. A few claimed he had once been imprisoned by the church for blasphemy, and he had made a dark pact in those days one that had finally come full circle. What is certain is that after Chastel's shot rang through the forest, the beast was never seen again. No more bodies, no more screams, just silence and suspicion. In the end, the Beast of Gévaudan became more than a terror. It became a case study in how governments spin narratives, how the powerful bury truths, and how common people must sometimes confront the darkness alone. A legend that revealed not just the savagery of a predator, but the fear of a society losing control. Even centuries later, the mystery of the Beast of Gévaudan remains unsolved. Though the killings ended with Jean Chastel's infamous shot, the question of what exactly stalked the hills of southern France continues to haunt historians, cryptozoologists, folklorists, and skeptics alike. What was it? A rogue wolf? A supernatural being? Or something else entirely? The most widely accepted theory is also the most mundane, that the beast was, in fact, a series of unusually large wolves or a single deformed or oversized specimen. This view holds that rural France, already home to countless wolves, simply experienced an exceptional case of predation, magnified by fear, superstition, and media sensationalism. But this theory raises several problems. For one, wolves rarely attack humans. While there are cases, they are extremely rare and usually driven by disease or desperation. The beast behavior targeting humans exclusively, often attacking in daylight and ignoring livestock, doesn't fit known wolf behavior. The consistency of its attacks over 3 years and the near ritualistic method of killing also doesn't align with animal instinct. Then there's the size. Multiple witnesses, including trained soldiers and hunters, describe the creature as abnormally large, far exceeding the dimensions of even the largest known wolves. One survivor stated it was as big as a donkey. Others noted strange coloration, disproportionately large jaws, or even unusual anatomy, which leads to theory 2, that it wasn't a wolf at all, but a hybrid animal. Some researchers believe the beast may have been a crossbreed, perhaps between a mastiff and a wolf, or even an exotic animal such as a hyena brought to France by traveling circuses or wealthy collectors. Hyenas have strong jaws, unusual gaits, and can appear incredibly menacing, especially to those unfamiliar with them. This theory gained traction in the 20th century when researchers noted that one noble family near Gévaudan, the de Moranges, had a known interest in exotic animals. Some accounts even suggest they may have been involved in breeding or training a beast for sport or personal amusement, which then escaped or was deliberately released. But why would such a creature target only humans? And how would it evade capture for 3 years? This leads into the third, darker theory, that the beast was a trained killer and animal conditioned by a human handler. This would explain its cunning, its ability to evade traps, and its uncanny targeting of isolated individuals. Some survivors even reported seeing a man nearby just before or after attacks. Could someone have been orchestrating the terror? Jean Chastel's name comes up often here. Some believe he wasn't just a hero, but possibly the mastermind behind the beast. The idea goes that Chastel or someone in his family trained the creature to kill, then later hunted and destroyed it to end the chaos they had caused. There is, of course, no direct evidence for this, but it persists in folklore and modern retellings. The notion of a hunter creating his own monster, then slaying it for glory, has a certain mythic appeal. Then there's the supernatural angle. In a time and place where science had not yet replaced folklore, many genuinely believed the beast was a demonic creature, or even a werewolf. The attacks often came in waves, under specific conditions. Survivors spoke of glowing eyes. Some claimed the beast could vanish into mist. The church at the time was split. Some priests preached divine punishment. Others denounced the stories as pagan hysteria. The use of silver bullets by Chastel, whether true or invented later, only added fuel to the werewolf theory. In folklore across Europe, silver is the weapon of purity used to slay the cursed. Whether Chastel actually used silver rounds or not, the symbolism stuck. and with it, the idea that the beast was more than flesh and blood. Some modern researchers have offered a psychological explanation. The people of Gévaudan, living in poverty, isolation, and under constant threat from famine and war, were in a state of chronic stress. In such conditions, mass hysteria is possible. The story of the beast may have acted as a container for communal fear, a way to explain suffering, give it form, and respond to it. The more deaths occurred, the more the myth grew, feeding off the fear it created. But again, this does not explain the bodies, the hundreds of eyewitnesses, the consistencies across multiple villages, the sheer number of dead. Even if mass hysteria shaped the legend, something very real was killing people. There's another theory, less popular but deeply unsettling, that some of the deaths may have been murders, covered up as attacks by a beast. In times of panic, crimes can be hidden inside chaos. A jealous lover, a land dispute, a robbery gone wrong. Could some of the killings have been committed by humans and blamed on the beast to avoid investigation? It's possible, but it doesn't explain the patterns, the method of attack, the survivors, the enormous tracks in the mud, the creature shot by Chastel. The truth is, no single theory fits all the facts. The Beast of Gévaudan remains an enigma, one foot in the real world, the other in legend. Its story has been riddled in books, films, even scientific journals. It has become a symbol not just of terror, but of the power of myth. How we shape monsters, how fear bends truth, how stories grow in the shadows. It may have been a wolf, or a hybrid, or a trained killer, or something the world still doesn't have a name for, but it was real. It left behind bones, blood, and silence, and to this day, no one truly knows what walked the hills of Gévaudan, or why it came, or why it stopped. When the final body was buried, the howling in the hills finally ceased. Gévaudan was left not with peace but with questions. The people returned to their fields, their flocks, and their families, but something had changed. Not just in the forest, but in their hearts. The beast had not only torn through flesh, it had clawed through the fabric of belief about what was possible, what was natural, and what safety meant. Because how do you return to normal when normal had been shattered? For years, the story of the beast lived on in whispers. Around fires, in churches, during storms, children were warned not to wander too far lest the creature return. Parents passed the tales to their sons. Priests cited the terror in sermons, and hunters walked the forest always a little more wary than before. But over time, as decades passed, the whispers turned into legend, then into myth, and eventually into mystery. Yet Gévaudan never truly forgot. The landscape still holds echoes of that terror. Trails through the highlands are still marked with signs about Labate. Local museums display old woodcuts and faded maps. Statues stand where blood was once spilled. And even now, the villagers will tell you with a half smile or a serious glance that the story was true. Every bit of it. And that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't over. What makes the story of the beast endure isn't just the body count, or the mystery, or the spectacle. It's what it represents. The beast was a reflection of a country in turmoil, of a people abandoned by power, of fear unchecked, of how stories can grow when no one in authority steps in with truth, or worse, when they lie to protect themselves. The government had declared the beast slain long before the killings stopped. They needed the narrative to end, even if the terror hadn't. That decision rooted in pride, politics, and the optics of control left the people of Gévaudan vulnerable, and they remembered that. They remembered being told, "You're safe now," only to bury another child. They remembered the silence when they cried for help, and they remembered who actually saved them, not a king, not a captain, but a quiet man from their own hills, Jean Chastel. Whether hero, tool of fate, or something more ambiguous, he symbolized what the crown could not, the power of a single person to face the darkness when institutions failed. And that, perhaps, is the truest legacy of the beast. Not just a mystery in the woods, but a cautionary tale about neglect, fear, and the stories we tell ourselves to survive what we can't understand. Today, the Beast of Gévaudan has become a fixture in French folklore. It appears in novels, in films, in games. It's been called France's werewolf, the real-life monster. The unsolved terror, scholars still debate it. Cryptozoologists chase theories. And every few years, a new book promises to uncover the truth. But the truth, like the beast itself, remains elusive. Some say it was never real. Others believe it never died. There are reports still, today, of strange howls in the Auvergne, of eyes shining in the tree line, of missing livestock, of deep scratches carved into bark high above where a normal animal could reach. No proof, just stories. But in Gévaudan, stories matter. Because long after the last scream faded into the wind, long after the blood was washed from the grass, and long after the bones returned to earth, the memory remained in every rustle of leaves, in every heavy fog, in every parent telling their child, "Don't go too far, because once upon a time, something walked here, something that wasn't supposed to exist, something that killed, vanished, and left only questions behind. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's still watching." That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you raise an eyebrow or So don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that dusty little bell so you never miss another echo from the past. Drop it in the comments, we're always listening for new echoes. Got a weird bit of history you think we should cover? Until next time, keep your curiosity loud and your history weird. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you